Our major weapon of struggle against apartheid oppression and exploitation is our people organized into mass formation of the democratic movement.
Nelson Mandela's life is an extraordinary story of resilience, leadership, and an unyielding commitment to justice and equality. Born Rolihlahla Mandela on July 18, 1918, in the small village of Mvizo in the eastern Cape of South Africa, Mandela would become a global icon for his efforts to dismantle apartheid and build a democratic, multiracial nation. Despite spending 27 years in prison, he emerged not with bitterness, but with a message of reconciliation and peace, forging a legacy that continues to inspire millions around the world. Early life and influences. Mandela's early life was deeply rooted in the traditions and history of his people. His father, Gadla Henry Mfakeni-Iswa, was a local chief and counselor to the Thembu royal family, instilling in Mandela a sense of duty and leadership from an early age. Mandela's given name, Rolihlahla, means pulling the branch of a tree or troublemaker, which foreshadowed his role in challenging the status quo. When Mandela was 9 years old, his father passed away, and he was placed under the guardianship of John Jintaba Dalindibo, the acting regent of the Thembu people. This move was pivotal as it exposed Mandela to the power structures and leadership dynamics within his culture. The regent ensured that Mandela received a formal education, an opportunity not widely available to Black South Africans at the time. Mandela attended a Methodist mission school, where he was baptized as a Christian and given the English name Nelson, following a common colonial practice. Mandela later attended Helltown, a prestigious Methodist secondary school, and then Fort Hare University, one of the few institutions for higher education available to Black Africans. It was at Fort Hare that Mandela began to develop his political consciousness. He was involved in student protests and was ultimately expelled for participating in a boycott against university policies. This early activism marked the beginning of Mandela's lifelong commitment to challenging injustice, moving to Johannesburg and political awakening. In 1941, to avoid an arranged marriage planned by his guardian, Mandela fled to Johannesburg, where he worked as a security officer in a mine and later as a law clerk, while completing his bachelor's degree through correspondence courses. The move to Johannesburg was transformative for Mandela, as he was introduced to the harsh realities of urban apartheid, where Black South Africans faced severe discrimination, police brutality, and economic exclusion. Mandela's exposure to the injustices of apartheid in Johannesburg deepened his resolve to fight for freedom. It was during this period that he met Walter Sisulu, a key figure in the African National Congress, ANC, who became a mentor and close friend. With Sisulu's encouragement, Mandela joined the ANC in 1944. He quickly became involved in the party's youth wing, co-founding the African National Congress Youth League, ANCYL. The ANCYL aimed to transform the ANC into a more militant and mass-based organization dedicated to direct action against apartheid. In the same year, Mandela married his first wife, Evelyn Toko Mays, a nurse, and the couple had 4 children. However, his growing involvement in politics put a strain on their marriage, and they eventually divorced in 1958. Mandela's political activities increasingly occupied his time as he and other leaders of the ANC Youth League launched a program of action advocating for strikes, boycotts, and civil disobedience to challenge apartheid policies. The Defiance Campaign and the Freedom Charter. Mandela's role in the ANC grew throughout the 1950s. In 1952, he was appointed as the National Volunteer-in-Chief of the Defiance Campaign, a mass protest organized by the ANC and the South African Indian Congress against discriminatory laws. The campaign encouraged Black South Africans to defy apartheid regulations peacefully by entering whites-only areas and refusing to carry the hated passbooks that restricted their movement. Mandela traveled the country, inspiring others to join the movement, and his leadership earned him national recognition. Although the campaign led to the arrest of thousands, including Mandela, it marked a turning point in the struggle against apartheid. It galvanized international attention and increased support for the ANC. Despite his arrest and conviction under the Suppression of Communism Act, which banned his travel and public speaking for 2 years, Mandela continued to organize covertly. In the same year, he and Oliver Tambo opened the first black law firm in South Africa, Mandela and Tambo, providing legal representation for black South Africans who were often denied justice. The turning point in Mandela's political career came in 1955 with the adoption of the Freedom Charter at the Congress of the People in Kliptown. The Freedom Charter called for a non-racial, democratic South Africa and became a blueprint for the anti-apartheid movement. Its declaration that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white, symbolized Mandela's vision for an inclusive society. However, the apartheid government responded with a crackdown, and Mandela, along with 155 others, was arrested in 1956 on charges of treason. The trial, known as the Treason Trial, lasted 4 years, but all the accused, including Mandela, were eventually acquitted in 1961. Armed struggle and imprisonment. The Sharpeville Massacre in 1960, where police killed 69 unarmed protesters, marked a tragic escalation in the struggle against apartheid and convinced Mandela that peaceful protests alone were insufficient. The massacre led to the banning of the ANC and other anti-apartheid groups. In response, Mandela and his colleagues decided to form Umkhonto we Sizwe MK, or Spear the Nation, a militant wing of the ANC with Mandela as its leader. They believed that sabotage, rather than armed conflict, would minimize casualties while targeting symbols of apartheid power. Mandela went underground, traveling across Africa and to other countries to gain support for the anti-apartheid cause. He received military training in Algeria and met with leaders across Africa and the world, emphasizing the need for solidarity against South Africa's racist regime. In 1962, Mandela was arrested upon his return to South Africa and sentenced to 5 years in prison for leaving the country illegally and inciting workers to strike. In 1963, while serving his sentence, police raided a farmhouse in Rivonia outside Johannesburg, where they discovered documents linking Mandela and other ANC leaders to acts of sabotage. This led to the infamous Rivonia trial, where Mandela and his comrades faced charges of sabotage and conspiracy to overthrow the government. In his defense speech, Mandela famously declared, "I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." Mandela and 7 others were sentenced to life imprisonment. In 1964, he was sent to Robben Island, a maximum security prison off the coast of Cape Town. For 18 of his 27 years in captivity, he endured harsh conditions, performing hard labor in a lime quarry and living in a small cell with minimal privileges. Despite these hardships, Mandela remained a source of inspiration, both within the prison and beyond. He continued to study, earning a law degree through correspondence, and he led efforts among prisoners to demand improved conditions, the global anti-apartheid movement, and Mandela's release. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, Mandela's imprisonment became a focal point for the international anti-apartheid movement. Activists worldwide campaigned for his release, making Free Nelson Mandela a rallying cry. Governments, international organizations, and influential figures such as Archbishop Desmond Tutu pressured the South African regime to reform. Despite being isolated in prison, Mandela's influence only grew, symbolizing the struggle for freedom and equality. In the late 1980s, South Africa faced increasing internal resistance and international pressure. The apartheid government, led by President F.W. de Klerk, realized that maintaining the status quo was unsustainable. In 1989, de Klerk began to dismantle apartheid laws, and in 1990, he made the historic decision to release Nelson Mandela unconditionally. On February 11, 1990, after 27 years in prison, Mandela walked out of Victor Verster prison, greeted by jubilant crowds. His release marked the beginning of a new era for South Africa, building a new nation, the transition to democracy. Upon his release, Mandela faced the monumental task of negotiating an end to apartheid while preventing a civil war. He understood that reconciliation was essential for South Africa's future. Instead of seeking retribution, Mandela chose a path of dialogue and peace, engaging with de Klerk and other apartheid leaders to dismantle the racist system and build a democratic society. His efforts led to the negotiation of a new constitution, guaranteeing equal rights for all South Africans, regardless of race. He implemented policies aimed at improving housing, education, and health care for the black population, though he faced significant challenges in transforming the deeply entrenched inequalities left by decades of apartheid. Nevertheless, his efforts to promote unity, justice, and economic development laid the groundwork for a more equitable society. In 1999, Mandela stepped down as president, honoring his commitment to serve only one term. His decision set an important precedent for democratic leadership and peaceful transitions of power in Africa. After leaving office, Mandela continued to work as an advocate for peace and human rights, focusing on issues such as HIV, AIDS awareness, and poverty alleviation. The enduring legacy of Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela passed away on December 5, 2013, at the age of 95, leaving behind a legacy of courage, forgiveness, and leadership. Known affectionately as Madiba, his clan name, he is remembered as a man who fought tirelessly for freedom and justice, even when it meant sacrificing his own freedom for nearly 3 decades. His life's work transformed South Africa and inspired millions globally to fight for justice and equality. Mandela's legacy extends beyond politics. It is a testament to the power of perseverance, humility, and forgiveness. His journey from prisoner to president symbolizes hope, not just for South Africans, but for all people struggling against oppression and inequality.